Hi there. Welcome to my introduction to Conan the Barbarian video. Alright, I have the complete works of Robert E. Howard. His Conan the Barbarian work. It is right here. It has really crappy artwork in it. Anyway, it's there. And what I've got on the screen is the character screen of Age of Conan Unchained. That's my character, Davok. He looks exactly like Conan. So, I have a 3-page introduction to Conan the Barbarian that I'm going to read. His work was out of print for over 40 years. Anyway, I'm very lucky to have this book. Introduction. Tales of sorcery and swordplay, life or death struggles against terrifying mythical beasts, and courageous heroes making defiant stands against the most evil of enemies. To many nowadays, those would sound like descriptions of the adventures of Tolkien's hobbits in Middle-earth, or C.S. Lewis's child warriors in Narnia. Yet, years before the Baggins clan began their battle with the Ring, or the Pevensie family fell through the back of the wardrobe, there was a fantasy hero living in his own realm of sinister magic, demonic creatures, and dark forces. Conan the Cimmerian, or Barbarian as he was also known, first appeared in the pulp fiction magazine Weird Tales in December 1932 in the story The Phoenix on the Sword. The creation of author Robert E. Howard, Conan was partly based on a previous character developed by Howard, King Cole, but was destined to become infinitely more successful. Cole had been an experiment for Howard as he played with accepted fiction themes to create something dramatically different. Swashbuckling adventure, spine-chilling horror, and the lore of myths and legends all came together as Howard crafted King Cole's world in the Shadow Kingdom for Weird Tales in 1929. Cole's reign faltered after just 2 published stories, but it was one of Cole's many rejected adventures, By This Axe I Rule, that was ultimately rewritten by Howard to become the first ever Conan story. If it seems strange for Howard to have taken what, after several rejected stories, might have seemed like a failed concept and revived it with the intention of creating a similar series, then it should be remembered that Howard was a professional writer. He would not have wanted to waste or discard anything that he had written, recycling material for an alternative publisher or converting it to fit a different genre, because Howard did not confine himself solely to fantasy fiction. Prolific in his output, he wrote boxing stories, having followed the sport since childhood and become a keen boxer himself, featuring hard-hitting characters such as Sailor Steve Costigan. He wrote westerns starring straight-shooting good guys like the Sonora Kid. He wrote historical fiction, detective yarns, horror stories, humorous tales, numerous essays, and a wealth of poetry. But it is as the father of the sword and sorcery fantasy genre that he will always be remembered. While Tolkien and Lewis are renowned for taking fantasy writing to a different level, their high fantasy or epic fantasy having its roots in academic research with plot lines and themes that thread their way through several lengthy novels, Howard's was a more down-to-earth, guts and glory fighting fantasy style. He did, however, put just as much invention and imagination into creating Conan's world as Tolkien applied to Middle-earth and Lewis did to Narnia. His essay, The Hyborian Age, which prefaces the stories in this book, demonstrates how he planned the history and geography of Conan's world as an extended, enhanced version of Cole's realm. Howard had a very good grasp of the way that people, places, and historical events relate to one another. Born in Piester, Texas in 1906, as a child, Howard journeyed extensively with his parents throughout his home state. His father was a traveling doctor, and his mother had also devoted years to tending the sick, spending so much of her time so doing that she contracted tuberculosis. On their travels, the young Howard was able to visit forts and former frontier towns, places where people told stories of Wild West gunfights and the Indian Wars, stories that were utterly enthralling to a young boy. Encouraged by his mother to read, Howard developed an interest in his own Irish-Scottish ancestry, Pictish folklore becoming a theme that was to have real resonance in his later writing career. Well-educated and hard-working, Howard remained devoted to his mother as he drifted through a variety of jobs before establishing himself as a writer in his early 20s. Sadly, his mother's health continued to deteriorate while Howard was battling against his own demons. His struggle with the dark force of depression had dominated his life for many years. He had often talked of suicide, despite his father and mother both imploring him never to take his own life. In June 1936, when he was told that his mother had sunk into a coma from which she would never recover, Howard walked out of the family home, sat in his car outside the house, and shot himself in the head. He never lived to see Conan develop into a household name around the world, and we can only imagine how much more the character might have grown under the guidance of his creator. And that was written by Rod Green, the series editor of this book. Thanks for watching or listening.